Spin-off of superheroes are nothing new. For every male hero, there's usually a female version not too far behind. Maybe there's a young sidekick that has all the same powers as his mentor, but is slightly less powerful. But what about frogs? In one of the weirdest moves in comic history, Throg is literally a frog with all the powers of Thor, right on down to his own tiny hammer. He's not from the wacky cartoon world of Spider-Ham, since his counterpart there is a big dog, but Throg is established to be his own thing, complete with his own team of pet Avengers. So, how is this possible? Well, sit back, relax, and let me break it down. But before we get too far into things, I want to give a quick thank you to the sponsor for today's video, CuriosityStream. As you've no doubt heard by now, CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service that features thousands of documentaries and non-fictional titles and originals from some of the world's greatest filmmakers. It's available worldwide on multiple platforms like the web, smart TVs, iOS, Android, Roku, and so many more, with content spanning a variety of topics like history, technology, music, and sports. So if you want to watch something like Ocean Mysteries, a series that's all about the fascinating world of aquatic creatures, including, say, frogs, then this service is a must. CuriosityStream adds new shows every single week, and if you go to curiositystream.com/Drake, you will get unlimited access for 25% off, bringing it down to the super affordable cost of only $14.99 for a whole year. So thank you very much to CuriosityStream for helping me take a break from the wacky world of comics for a little bit. But now, it's time to hop back into it. Throg made his first appearance in Thor number 364 in 1986, and was created by Walter Simonson. After Odin's death, a new leader for Asgard was to be chosen. And of course, the always scheming Loki wanted to knock Thor out of the competition. So on the day of the ceremony to crown the new ruler, Loki turned Thor into a massive frog the size of a football and stranded him on Earth. Despite his size, Thor was really struggling with his new body, having to defend himself from rats, getting caught up in a little bit of real-world Frogger, the works. However, since Thor was wearing his magical belt that increased his strength while he was transformed, Frog Thor was way stronger than any amphibian has any right to be. Still, things are a bit confusing, and luckily Thor was approached by another frog named Puddlegulp. Coincidentally, this new frog friend was also once a regular guy, and he was transformed by a witch, but now he is wrapped up in frog society. Yeah, it turns out that the frogs and rats of Central Park are at war with each other, and what ensues is an epic tale of kings and political turmoil. This shit is just straight up Game of Thrones. Game of lily pads, I guess. Thankfully, Thor's goats were out looking for him, with Mjolnir in tow, and when they found him, Thor was able to lift up his hammer, thus becoming the Frog of Thunder. Oh, and he's also human-sized now, which is terrifying. Thor goes back to Asgard, fought Loki, and returns back to normal, which brings the saga to a close. But did you notice that I never called Thor's transformation Throg? Well, that's because he's not Thor. He's the other frog, Puddlegulp. You see, decades later in 2009, writer Chris Eliopoulos gave us the series Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers, featuring every animal companion in the Marvel Universe partnering up and forming their own team. This is where we got the first appearance of Throg. Now, it is worth noting that the Pet Avengers books take place on an alternate universe, specifically Earth 97161, but expanding upon the Frog of Thunder storyline and Puddlegulp was just so much fun, especially considering that the plot thread of him actually being a human was never wrapped up in the Thor series. It turns out that in his past life, Puddlegulp was a man named Simon Walterson, which is a fantastic homage to his creator, Walter Simonson. Simon was a professional football player that couldn't play again after a leg injury, and when his wife and unborn child passed away, he became obsessed with speaking to her one last time. Simon spent every last penny that he had consulting psychics, mediums, and anybody who could possibly help him. But when he ran out of money and still tried to seek out the help of a fortune teller, she cursed him, turning Walterson into a frog, which he eventually accepted and took on the name Puddlegulp. After the previous story about Thor rolling into town and defending the Frog Kingdom, it was only a matter of time until the rats struck again. But thankfully, a sliver of Mjolnir fell off when one of Thor's goats stepped on it, despite Mjolnir being pretty explicitly way too durable for something like that to happen. Regardless, this overlooked fragment was found by Puddlegulp and magically transformed into his own tiny hammer. It's called Frolnir, and I love it. Weapon in hand, Puddlegulp transformed, complete with its own costume, and thus he took up the name Throg, Defender of Central Park. The Pet Avengers were assembled to track down the Infinity Gems, which took the team through all sorts of shenanigans, like fighting dinosaurs, exploring the depths of the ocean and the insides of a massive whale beast, teaming up with President Barack Obama's dog, and literally defeating Thanos because comics. Despite saving the galaxy, Throg still felt out of place and was having an identity crisis. With his power, he's not quite a human, not quite an Asgardian, not quite a frog. Throg traveled the Earth and beyond in search of himself, getting both him and the Pet Avengers wrapped up in conflict with all sorts of magical creatures that were being hunted by shadowy monsters. Honestly, it's a short and simple story that doesn't have too much to talk about, but at the end of it, Throg felt more confident in himself, which, that's nice. The last mission of the Pet Avengers was when they had to help some other superheroes that were also turned into frogs, including Thor once again. And I find it so weird that Bucky still has his robotic arm, but Tony's Iron Man suit didn't transform as well. And Thor can't lift Mjolnir. That doesn't make any sense since the last time he was turned into a frog, he could lift it. Weird. Anyway, the culprits behind the frogification were the Malkians, who are essentially space dragons. After calling in more of the Avengers, a big battle ensued. But things were able to calm down when one of the Pet Avengers, Kitty Pryde's dragon Lockheed, was able to reason with the Malkians and convince them to turn the heroes back to normal. Which also brought Tony's suit back with him. Okay, small pause here because I am so confused. Like I said, Bucky's robot arm was still a thing in frog form, and even when Thor was transformed all the way back in the 80s, he was still super strong because he was wearing his belt of strength. Now, granted that was Loki who was the one that changed him and not the Malkians, but if the clothes and gear are clearly not part of the transformation, then Tony not having a suit makes zero sense. Am I getting too worked up over some really dumb and trivial bullshit? Absolutely. But Iron Frog absolutely could have been a thing, and that is so stupid that it would have been amazing, and I wish it happened. Now, that's the end of the Pet Avengers, and like I said, none of it was canon, including the very existence of Throg. Or was it? Yeah, Marvel decided to make Throg canon to the main Marvel universe, and directly wrote him into the Thor comic. He even had the same backstory as the Pet Avengers series, and some of those stories were apparently confirmed to have happened, but we don't know which. Personally, I'm hoping for the one where they defeated Thanos, because that's ridiculous. Throg was also brought on to the Asgardians of the Galaxy, a team of Asgardian misfits brought together to try and find a horn that grants its wielder control over an army of the undead, perfect for the looming War of the Realms. Throg himself actually didn't do much in this series since he spoke in croaks. He was basically just there for the absurdity of there being a frog Thor on the team and be additional muscle. After the war, Throg was once again moved into the background. That is, until he was brought back in a truly spectacular fashion. The 2020 Thor series is one of my all-time favorites, and there was a great storyline about Thor's sort of alter ego, Donald Blake, losing his sanity inside of what's essentially an endless, time-looping holding cell. This dude went out on an all-out rampage, slicing through more or less the entirety of Thor's supporting cast, and when he breaks free, a secret weapon is called in. Throg. Because of his size, Throg is a tough opponent to take down, but Blake managed to get his hands on him and swallowed Throg whole, resulting in him bloodily bursting through his teeth. Eventually though, Blake did get the better of him, and Throg was defeated. It's just so weird to see this cute and ridiculous character being taken so seriously and bleeding out. But of course, good almost always triumphs over evil in the world of comics, so Blake was defeated by Thor and his pals, and at the time of this recording, that's the last that we've seen of Throg. But I wouldn't be surprised if he hops back into the forefront sometime down the line. I freaking love Throg, if that wasn't obvious. He's one of those absurd and over-the-top ridiculous things that make comic books comic books. And if you're into that kind of weird stuff, then you might be interested in my show, Because Comics, which is all about stuff just like this. So thankfully, I've got a handy-dandy playlist with every episode. So if you enjoyed this, maybe consider giving some of those videos a watch. Plus, I always have way more videos in the works than I know what to do with, so if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. I'd seriously appreciate it. But anyway, I hope you've learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.